All right, I think we have 6 of us, right? So that's enough to get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 5th meeting of the Greater Downtown San Jose Economic Recovery Task Force. For those tuning in for the first time, I'm Wisa Uemura, Executive Director of San Jose Taiko, Co-Chair of the Arts and Special Events Committee, and a Task Force Co-Chair.
I'm Cash Boren, owner of Haberdasher, Co-Chair of the Food and Beverage Committee, and a Task Force Co-Chair.
For our attendees, if there are any, thank you for joining us this very early morning. There will be an opportunity for you all to participate during public comment later in the agenda. If you'd like, you can click on the raise hand function or feature to get in the queue. I'd like to remind both task force members as well as any attendees that today's call is only 60 minutes long rather than our usual 90 minutes. So we are going to keep it pretty tight.
So we'll interject real quick. Are we recording already? I don't know if we're recording.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to make sure. Apologize.
No problem. So we'll do roll call real quick. Please unmute yourself and reply here when I call your name. Brendan Rawson.
Here.
Wisa Uemura here. Fernanda Carrera.
Here.
Cash Boren.
Here.
April G. Chris Patterson Simmons.
I'm here.
Megan Karabatsos. Takahiro Kitamura.
Here.
Laura Chmielewski.
Here.
Blage Zelalich.
Here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, so again, the main objective of today's meeting is to continue our discussion from Wednesday. Again, there is still a lot of content to get through in now only 60 minutes. So a few friendly reminders. The intent of this task force is to put forth that package of policy recommendations to the City Council. Let's not focus too much on granular details during today's discussion, rather on the big picture. Ultimately, Councilmember Perales and his colleagues will move forward to draft more informed policies due to the task force contributions to that policymaking process. Now, before we begin, I'd like to share the format for this portion. Task Force co-chairs Wisa and I will read each of the additional recommendations, and then committees can share their comments or concerns in turn. Open discussion on the recommendation is welcome before we move on. And a friendly reminder about our house rules: be respectful at all times, step up and step back, stay on topic, be mindful of the time, and please represent your committees in this discussion, not your personal opinions or personal priorities. We will be taking live notes during the discussion.
Sorry. Let's see. I think we're going to start with the first one. So let me get to the live doc. Let me make sure. So I believe the first additional I can't view it. The first additional recommendation comes from the Arts and Special Events Committee, merely because we're listed first amongst the committees. We tried to reframe this. Thank you, Brendan, for reframing this kind of in similar language to the draft recommendations earlier. So we'd like to put forth an additional recommendation to request that the Office of Economic Development craft a specific Greater Downtown Economic Recovery and Stimulus Plan. This plan should be data-driven. It should be informed by the most current California, I think that's Board of Equalization, sales tax receipts and EDD job loss data for the Greater Downtown. This plan should prioritize job recovery in the hospitality, arts, entertainment, and whichever other sectors are identified as the greatest hit by the county required shelter-in-place directives. C, this plan should examine stimulus recommendations, including business and event permit moratoriums, small business facade improvement and outdoor activation grants, low-cost loans for building retrofits such as installation of touchless restrooms. D, this plan should focus upon strategies that immediately and directly impact upon City of San Jose revenues, such as sales tax and TOT tax revenues. So I know for many of you, you may not have had a chance to review that before now. So we're gonna just pause a little bit, let you digest that. And if Brendan wants to add anything in terms of explanation, you can go ahead.
I'm not so sure there's much more to add in terms of explanation. I think it kind of spells out a fair amount there. I think from our committee's conversations, it was really around this idea of how do we ensuring, knowing that this thing is going to be drag on for more than we all care for, and that downtown's going to have a fair amount of different sort of challenges, and that the city's Office of Economic Development does a lot of work focused on different parts of the city, and can focus on a specific strategy to the downtown, and that we're wanting to see it this effort of our task force continue forward in a manner that would fit with the way the city tackles these kinds of issues, I guess.
So I'm going to call out each committee. Since Arts and Special Events already commented, we'll move on to Food and Beverage.
As far as I know, we don't have anything to add to this, Fernanda.
No.
All right. And then General Retail, Chris.
I'm reading it and I've reread it. I think it's good. I don't have anything more to add. I don't have any notes from April. What she would want to add. I think it's good, Wessa. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Personal Care.
Yeah, I mean, Megan's not here, but I don't think we have anything to add. I think, we think it's good as well.
And then we can go to general, I believe that's everybody. So general discussion, Laura, Blage, any comments?
No, none for me, thanks.
Oh, Blage. Okay.
No.
Are we all, I guess, so then it sounds like we're relatively in agreement and we can add this as a number 9, depending how the rest of them fall out after all the revisions. Okay, thank you. Then we will move on.
So recommendation number 9, request the city to conduct an in-depth review of public safety policies and fees for both sanctioned and unsanctioned large public events and gatherings. This review should meaningfully engage the downtown business and resident community. This review should examine strategies to ensure public safety, as well as reduce associated event costs. For example, the establishment of a permit-free zone or zones for approved events of limited size. So we'll just start with see if there's any committee feedback with general retail.
No, if there's time, let me get back. I want to read that again.
Please, of course. Well, it can take one moment for us to review.
Thank you.
Because this is still kind of new. Personal care, Taki, did you have any input or?
No, I think, and I don't, when I say I don't have input, I don't mean that I don't support it. It's just, I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't think our businesses really have any input on this, but I think it sounds good.
Sure. Arts and special events.
I think just as commentary to it, I would just add, we're all aware the city's looking pretty hard at, policing issues kind of coming out of the range of the protests and looting issues that had happened. But I think the effort here was also, as they're talking about that and looking at some of those issues, the broader perspective on large events and gatherings in downtown, the way the city permits and the costs associated with doing those things, that so it's maybe appropriate time to be considering those factors as part of this review.
Thank you, Brendan. Chris, I wanted to circle back around to you if you had any comments or concerns.
Well, I'm just trying to visualize how it would look for urban kiosk, because that spot was designed for gathering, and I'm just trying to see how we fit in and how that's going to work for us, because it's similar to an outdoor market, but it's indoors. And so you're saying both sanctioned for sanctioned and unsanctioned large public events and gatherings. This refers should be meaningfully engaged. Yeah, I guess I'm okay with that because again, ours is private, so our fees would be a little different. We wouldn't have to have permits or anything, but I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I have a question.
Sure.
What kind of large public events and gatherings are you referring to? An example.
Sure. So, I mean, part of in terms of large events, you know, all the range of music events. I was right, music in the park, or blues festival, or Pride, or San Jose Jazz Summerfest. Those sorts of things. The range of things that we do in terms of managing public safety that we're required to do, how does the whole realm of these new things that the city is looking at when large crowds gather in San Jose downtown, what's the policies and structures for managing that that's asked of the event producer or that the city does of its own accord to manage those things? When it kind of spills, what I'm thinking of, it spills over to, like a protest gathering, that realm, I'm less knowledgeable on that, of how the city, manages that, how it chooses and where to, that police is part of that. But it seems like it's part of a healthy discussion for us, for the downtown, of understanding how that works, and understanding as tenants or business owners in downtown, that if there's things we want to add, or our experience from this past few weeks, that the city hears out those concerns through it, as it sort of looks at revisiting these policies and understanding how best to ensure public safety in those times.
I would just add some of the events that Brendan listed earlier are relatively far off. I mean, they're not happening this summer. They're going to be after we're pretty much reopened. But I think it also lends to some of those closed street events that we're talking about, like extending beyond the footprint right outside of your brick and mortar, and then combined and shared common space. If that happened, and depending when that gets opened or it gets activated, I mean, this could apply to those events as well. I mean, we're not saying we don't want police presence. I think it's just more about an evaluation of what's expected of any sort of event I don't like using event because of course we're all a little bit shy of saying event in this climate and the stay at home and the health regulations, but any sort of larger food court gathering kind of place, like just how do we balance feeling safe and feeling comfortable with the security measures that are in place? What can be done on a community or business district level, and what could be coming from San Jose Police Department, given that all of us have limited bandwidth? I think, is that fair, Brendan? Is that a fair assessment?
Sure, I think it's a fair addition. I mean, I have concerns, obviously, for longer term perspective on, as larger events be able to come back online, and how we manage those things. But I think your points are accurate.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I believe we were able to open that up for general discussion. There is a question of whether or not we would, as a task force, do we feel it's necessary to prioritize these recommendations? Because we have quite a few.
Oh.
And that's something. Oops, Lisa, go ahead.
Laura had her hand up to discuss.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Recommendation 9.
Thank you. Just a quick thing. Do we want to consider adding to this a C, which would be for the city to consider non-traditional uses of city facilities, buildings with accompanying funding? And I'm thinking of spaces like the South Hall, right? As social distancing hopefully relaxes over time, but until it does, to facilitate events in spaces that weren't considered before. Consider non-traditional uses of city facilities and buildings for this purpose, which would be to help facilitate large public events and gatherings. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense as in being added. I think it would come down to whether, and I'll need Brendan's help with this. I think the gist of recommendation 9 is the in-depth review of public safety policies and fees. And well,
Yeah.
or is it the emphasis on the unsanctioned?
Well, the thrust of how it's written, yeah, has been around the public safety issues and how to sort of tackle or address, review those. But I think to Laura's point, it's on point. It's an issue that will be great to figure out. Maybe this is more so part of that. The earlier recommendation on what are the elements of economic recovery. How do we repurpose things that maybe it comes through that sort of process. I was thinking the other day, and I wasn't sure how to raise it in our context of our conversation. But I think if convention center activity ain't happening for quite a while, is there an opportunity that the convention center parking could be made available to for free for patrons and employees? And that certainly could be something that helps SOFA district folks. But it would seem like maybe the idea of that looking at economic recovery strategies where some initiative like that maybe be able to be hashed out and talked about whether that's a good idea or bad idea.
But I would say too, include in this that it would identify a funding source to facilitate that, because I know that so many city facilities require certain things like use of union labor or security, that along with identifying these spaces, that we identify funding to support the use of them.
I would just echo Brendan's comment about, I think there are two very good points that Laura and Brendan bring up. Seems to me kind of a little bit out of place with this recommendation that really focuses on kind of public safety costs and policies. So I think adding what you just said, Laura, and what you just said, Brendan, to the recommendation about economic recovery and kind of thinking out of the box makes more sense. And then the one other question, or the one other comment I would have is, I think that including kind of the word sanctioned and non-sanctioned in the recommendation language kind of both detracts and maybe kind of throws things off base a little bit. The crux of the recommendation is to review policies and costs associated with public safety and large gatherings, right? So whatever those large gatherings are, whether they're events or other things. So I would just recommend tightening up the recommendation language a little bit.
And I'm not trying to make this go any longer than it needs to, but I'm also a little confused, like with, for example, South Hall, because I thought above it said these are more like outdoor events, and are we not trying to bring outdoor events into indoors, right? So like, I feel like unless, and then the other thing too, like South Hall has a pretty like hefty price tag. Like, so if we were talking like a Japantown festival that's in the streets and we have to pay for permits and police to move into the South Hall, like I'm just not clear if the suggestion is that the city would donate that or something, or
no, just really quickly, all I was thinking was that non-traditional spaces that hadn't been considered at all, that city spaces should be considered and made affordable for festivals and arts groups. Whether it's the street or whether it's the interior of a building or a parking lot.
Yeah, I see that Chris has her hand up. Chris, would you like, do you have a question, comment?
Yes. What's going to be considered a large space? Is it going to be the square footage, the amount of people, the capacity? What's going to be considered a large space? I think that should be taken into account also. Make sense? No?
Noted. I think Laura's talking about the facilities. I mean, I think yes, that makes sense, and that will be part of the relooking at repurposing spaces that are available and not being used currently.
Right.
But I think it sounds like we're in agreement that this comment will be added to recommendation 8 versus recommendation 9. So, okay, I think then we'd like to move on to retail committee. because you had a couple of additional thoughts that might not have been automatically or included in the pre-discussed or recommendations discussed prior. Sorry, it's really early in the morning. I'm having problems forming coherent sentences. So retail, if you would like to bring up some of the additional notes that you guys had.
Try to get back around to me. I got to reach out to April. She was going to send me that and she hadn't. So let me text her. Thank you.
Okay. And then I think personal care, you all had a couple of additional notes as well.
So yeah, like especially with a lot of the gyms, and so with personal care, we've just all been shut down. There's no curbside, there's no whatever, and essentially until we reopen, we're just not working. So there were a few businesses that were asking if there's something that can be some sort of rent relief or something, something where the city council could actually encourage landlords. So I've been fortunate, like Japantown's very family oriented. Like my landlord actually called me the day after. I was like, your rent is going to be this for now. But unfortunately, most of the other people didn't have that. So just something like more, I mean, I know everyone's been asking their landlords for relief, but I think our committee feels that it would have a little more, if the city said something like, hey, we encourage this kind of thing, some percentage of help. And then I think we're just, the parking thing just always gets brought up. And like I said, I understand that's kind of, it goes back and forth because I'm actually really personally torn about parking because I feel like some of our immediate solutions actually might in the long run make it worse. But we definitely do. I mean, and I know Lisa, you're aware of this, like it would be nice to get another lot somewhere near Japantown, but I don't know exactly where that'd be. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much the gist of it though. Just basically city to say something to landlords if possible. I don't know if they will, but.
So okay, so there's two up. Let's take the first one, which was having the city strongly encourage landlords to provide rent relief to businesses that have been closed and not allowed to reopen at this time. So I can't remember where we were. We'll start with arts and special events. Of course, similar to our recommendations earlier, we haven't been able to sit this with our committees necessarily, but what do you think, Brendan?
I think the thrust of it is great, and I don't know the details of what the realms of the part of the city asking. There's coordination too about with county and maybe is there a moratorium or issues related to property tax from property owners being able to pass along some manner of help to commercial businesses on their rent. I also wondered if I think there's going to be as part of like the city's CARES related dollars that they have and the ability to support small business. I think this issue around rent is such a huge thing for us. So the rent is too damn high, just period. And and if there's marginal ways that the city can help small business with that particular issue, they can innovate on so many other ways. But this issue is an area that there should be some manner of recommendation from our task force, I think.
All right, food and beverage, thoughts on the rent moratorium?
I'd kind of like to echo Brennan's sentiments here. It's a complicated issue, but some kind of comment or discussion, because it is sometimes the final nail in the coffin for so many of our types of businesses, because the costs for everyone are high. But rent is, again, not simple, but I could see how it wouldn't be a terrible idea to mention wanting something in the works, some kind of discussion or thought process.
Is there anything in effect now that we're not aware of? Does anyone know?
I mean,
No?
besides a moratorium on evictions, right? I'm not aware of anything.
Yeah, currently there's only the moratorium on evictions.
So there's no incentive
Commercial
for
industry.
property owners to give any kind of relief, only by their goodwill.
Not currently.
That would definitely be a help. And free parking would be a help too, because anyone who doesn't have their own parking lot, and downtown is people, anything to get people down here, the better.
General retail, if you have comments on the rent relief.
I do. I'm trying to understand because it's like a two-sided coin here. You have the property owners and then you have the people that rent. I was on another webinar, and it's unfortunate that the property owners that own these properties, they're not getting any relief. There were several people on that call. They said they're ready to bail out. And so everybody's asking for rent decrease or reduce. And they don't understand that these property owners that have these properties that you're renting from, they still have a mortgage to pay. They're not receiving anything. If you have X amount of properties, after that, they're capped off. They can't get any help. So it's a catch-22 situation. How do we help the people that are renting? And how do we help the people that we're renting from? And so it's really, really sad because we're asking these people that have to pay a mortgage, don't pay your mortgage. Don't pay your mortgage. Let me not pay my rent. And it's going to be bad. We're going to have a ghost town because people are going to give up. I have one friend already. She's closing the doors on her end. She can't comply with everything that's going on. And it's going to be a lot of businesses that were on that call. They're not happy. They feel they're being screwed because almost like the beginning when everybody's talking about the restaurants, but not the retail. You know, we got to help both. We got to figure out some type of relief from the city, comply, work with the business owners, with the property owners, because they're here in our city. If they don't have the property, we don't have anyone to rent from. So they got to consider that. To me, that's my opinion. They got to consider the property owners as well as the lessees too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Let's see. And then talking about the parking, going back, I know Fernanda shared comments about the parking, but does any of the committees have any comments about the providing more parking for downtown employees of small businesses? Okay, and I know that Megan's on the call too. Okay, so it sounds like that's 2 additional recommendations that we might be adding to our overall list, and we'll see how everything lays out after the revisions. Yes,
I just want to say I have no problem with, like, you know, from personal care, like us adding something that it can come from the top down. Like if a landlord is willing to like lower rent, then maybe the city should help them talk to the bank about their mortgage. I have no problem with that at all. In fact, it seems like in parts of Europe they've done that where they suspend mortgage payments and then it trickles down, like, so then they can suspend the rent. Not just like, oh, you owe us 3 times as much in 3 months, but rather like actually just put a pause on it. But I just don't know if the city's gonna be able to do that for either of us.
I'll add one more quick comment. I know for residential mortgages, depending on your bank where you have your mortgage from, they are doing just what you're recommending, Taki. Is some of them are just saying, just don't pay it for a couple months and we'll just add that on to your term. I don't know. I know that's not every single bank, but I know from personal experience, some of the banks are doing that. I don't see why that can't be possible for commercial, but that's probably a little bit of a bigger issue.
Any other comments about either of personal care's additional recommendations? Rent relief or parking? Last call. Okay, we're going to circle back to general retail. They have, we have the notes in front of us, so Cash and I will probably toggle, but there's about 4 or 5. Some of them were mentioned at Wednesday's meeting, so we'll see if it actually needs to be an additional recommendation or if it folds into one of the already discussed recommendations. Is that okay with you, Cash? Okay. So I think it's up on the shared screen, right? Or they're going to scroll up. But the first one from general retail, I'll read it for you, Chris, in case you haven't seen it from April yet. We want to see a commitment from the police department that they will enforce people wearing masks, task it to the community service officers. That's the first one.
The second, it would be helpful if there were 2 neighborhood liaisons that the neighborhood can go to ask about COVID-19 related issues. They would serve as the representative to the office.
Can I ask for clarification? 2 neighborhood liaisons to which office? The council office? Or I'm not sure to which office.
Chris, could you speak on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what she was sharing. I think that was when the conversation was about creating a different department within the police department to man that, and that's not going to happen. We already know that. I think that's what she was speaking about.
For the neighborhood liaisons?
For the neighborhood liaisons, yes. And I think we talked about community service officers being able to take that role because we already have them versus creating a whole different department. Am I confusing my meetings? Oh my goodness.
I know it's pretty difficult. So you think that the second bullet item about neighborhood liaisons is related to the police department enforcing mask wearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's more of a subset bullet versus.
Yes.
So for D3 staff, if we can take the second bullet under general retail and yeah, perfect. And okay, comments about the enforcement of wearing masks. I'm going to kind of lump it into that. We might not be able to get into the details of the how and the who, but I mean, we know the who is the police department, the ask is of the police department, but we don't know about where within the police department. So let's go to, I'm trying to remember our list, food and beverage.
I don't believe we have any comment on this. It's kind of a self-enforcing issue that, I mean, in food and beverage, I think we're very used to dealing with people when they're drinking and eating. So they don't want to follow rules, we ask them to leave. And it's not always that simple, obviously, but I don't think we have anything to add to this. Unless Fernanda has something.
No, I'm good.
Okay. General retail this is their recommendation. So personal care.
I just I don't think San Jose PD wants anything to do with this. I've actually heard cops quoted saying stuff like that. And also I just think given like the how can I say tenuous relationship between the police and the community, I can't see wanting this in Japantown, but you know.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I have some concerns. I think it'd be great if the police, encourage people to wear masks, but to require people, that doesn't sound good to me. It sounds like it's going to create a little bit more contention. And like Taki said, there's already quite a bit. I would just hope people would wear masks because they know it's the right thing to do. But I think requiring it is tricky.
Thank you. Arts and
I
special.
think part of the guidelines is that you have to have someone at your business that controls that when people are coming in. So, we should be responsible for that point coming into if they don't want to wear a mask, we probably just need to ask them to leave. And if it escalates from there, then I think that's where police should get involved.
I mean, that comes down to, obviously, like Fernanda saying, you control at your door. If you don't have someone standing at the door, you have posted notices. And if someone walks in anyway without a mask on, that's when you ask them to leave. And it would have to be the same as a trespassing issue. If someone's being weird and wonky in your business and you have to ask them to leave and then hopefully not call the police. I don't see how there's a regular way that PD could field a whole nother issue.
Okay. I think okay. And then arts and special events. I wonder if we could reword this that it's maybe not a direct ask to police department, but we're needing, I guess businesses who aren't as used to drawing that hard line and having to enforce regulations may need some support. Like, I'm not meaning physical support, like maybe, hopefully won't get that far, but whether it's, I don't actually know, but I'm wondering if we can reword the recommendation that it's more about some sort of assistance in guidelines, or like what we are capable of doing as business owners, like that it's okay for us to tell someone to leave if they're not following our rules of how we're trying to be compliant. For some organizations, that's not necessarily something we confront regularly. So that would be my suggestion, is maybe we reword the recommendation about the need.
Another point of view came in through the community right now, and it says that the community officers' budgets were reduced, and so it's recommended to probably look for new ways to help our communities without police presence.
Yeah. And I also wonder, as far as like there is within our business, like once they come into our space, whether it's on the sidewalk or our brick and mortar space, there's an amount of control and self-enforcement that we can enact. But I'm wondering if general retail is also talking about like open common space, like when you see people at a park or that. I mean, that's, I think, a completely different issue. And I for us, at least, I'm going to say, I think in arts and special events, we're really thinking about how do we build a culture of wanting, like a culture of people wanting to follow these guidelines, and actually to a certain degree, it is a mandate, right, from the public county health to wear masks. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Brendan, you want to add anything before we go to, I think council member has his hand up.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
So council member.
Yeah, I will echo that. The police department, the police chief himself made it pretty clear that they are not gonna kind of go out and be the enforcer on just the simple wearing of the masks. And considering they made that call before all these protests, the likelihood is zero that they're gonna go out and enforce masks. If anything, they're gonna be saying, find somebody else, right, to do it. And it won't be community service officers, because they're also an extent of the police department. This is a public health order. And I think that's part of the conversation too that's being had. That's the Zoom meeting I'll be on at 11:30, right, talking about when we make sort of some of these decisions, and then we fall back and rely on the police department when maybe they're not necessarily crimes being committed, but there's social issues. It may be a misdemeanor, right, in certain cases to violate the shelter-in-place order, but at the end of the day, it's not something that the police is saying that they want to go in and exert force on, right, or need to exert force on. So I don't think this one, it's not going to go anywhere, at least with SJPD, but I do think to be able to direct something to the county public health that talks about how are we actually going to, whether it's creating a culture or be able to create that space that way we don't have people that just blatantly violating it. We actually get people to follow it. I do think, what the police department specifically has said they'll get involved in. Obviously, if there's a confrontation, if somebody like a business owner says, hey, sorry, you can't be in my business, unless you're wearing your mask. And if that person blatantly says no, and refuses to leave, and now the police department will come in and they can act, and they can act on trespassing or other means. But they won't be acting on just simply going around and forcing people to wear masks. And I think they've made that clear.
Thank you, council member. I think Chris has her hand up, and then Fernanda had her hand up at one time.
Yeah,
So
I'll be
Chris
brief.
first.
I think when it comes to something like this, it's just a matter of compassion and finessing the whole situation about how we talk to people. It's no different than if somebody's coming in and you don't want them in. How do you talk to that person? We could do this. We really don't need the police for something like this. We have the empowerment to handle certain things on our own. And again, it's about leading by example. They see we wear masks, we have signage, we say, come on now, it's for your better, for your health, for your safety. And you could be nice to people. You could just be kind to a person and say, we need to wear these masks. And I'm wondering if it would be to the point where we can use a program similar to the STOP program. That's for people that loitering on your property and they've done things 3 times, they're out. And I think it's going to end up like this because the masks are just as severe as a person trespassing on your property. But I think we need to first take the easy way out, and that's just to be kind and just finesse it. Ask them, please wear your mask. There's a lot of people that are nasty, that are high-tempered. I'm talking about business owners, and they need to bring it down a little bit. It's just about being kind to somebody and just saying, please wear your mask. And I think the police already empowers us. We have the ability to do things. We don't have to rely on them to do everything for us. And that's what I want to share, because I think that's very important, because I've tried it and it does work. It was years before I would even call the police, because I would just talk to people and they respected that.
Thank you, Chris.
It's just about being kind. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so it seems like we're either going to reword this one or we're not going to add it to our package of recommendations. Fernanda, that's right.
Yeah, I'd like to see it come from leadership, because I think there's a lot of confused people out there. There's a lot of confusion in the public. I don't think they really think it's a mandated thing. So I think when the county releases guidelines and when they come out and speak in the media, they need to reinforce that is really a health measure. It's they need to explain why it's so important to wear a mask, because there's a lot of people walking out there that don't wear masks. So I think it needs to come from leadership, and I think the county needs to do a better job in spreading that message.
Thank you, Fernanda. Okay, so we'll, any other comments before we move on to the next one? We have, I think, 3 more. Okay, time check, it's 9:43. Okay, so this one, I have a feeling we touched on points of this on Wednesday, but I'm just going to read it. If I expand my business to the sidewalk, can I switch it up and change up the services or products that are not in the original business plan? And if I recall Blage's comments from the Wednesday meeting, that was a no. Like, you can't, unless you are already selling, and somebody from D3 staff can certainly help me remember, or anybody on the call can help me remember, but I thought she said it was only if that was part of your original functioning and operating within the brick and mortar. When you spill out into the street, it should be an echo of that. That was my understanding. Anybody remember different?
I think that's correct, Lisa. You're on point with that.
Okay. And then there's a second part to this. Can there be some flexibility on that and lesser restrictions? And I think she was saying, depending on these converted private or public spaces for common purpose or shared purpose, like a marketplace, then in that case, perhaps there would be flexibility. I don't know about lesser restrictions. I can't remember that part of the conversation, but so limitations on the sidewalk, not necessarily on the soon to be developed more common and shared spaces. Is that also correct? Is that assessment also correct?
I think that assessment is correct. I'm sad because Blage had to jump off this call for another emergency, but I'll definitely make sure that we have her confirmation of those 2 things as we move forward in the next meeting notes.
Okay. And then as far as the example provided, can I now serve alcohol now that I am selling outside? Is that coming, so a general retailer, or is that like a, because I know we talked about, I'm not going to remember, Cash, you're going to have to remember, was it type 47, type 48, something?
Right.
We talked about that. I'm sorry.
Well, in discussions about the type 47, 48 I was referring to go cocktails, but I mean, when you start, I'm sure any business can start adding alcohol. They just have to go through the permitting process, right? I don't see the city going lax, or county, anyone going lax on alcohol service in that particular instance. But then you open the door to, if you're general retail, one of the things I heard April say that made me very jealous is they don't ever have to deal with health inspectors. But if you want to serve alcohol, then you're going to bring the Department of Health into it. And that's your prerogative, I suppose. But I don't think in this environment that there's going to be any lax on that type of thing.
Yeah, you need an ABC license from the state if you're going to serve alcohol in any shape or form.
And then you can do non-alcoholic drinks, but then you have to get a Department of Health approval to be able to do that, and then serve it in a certain way that there can't be flies in it. So I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax that if general retail wants to go into, by all means, you go ahead. But I'd rather sell T-shirts.
I think Councilmember Perales has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo that that's not something that the city council makes a decision on. That's at the state level through ABC, at least for the example that's given. So if your business doesn't already have one of those licenses to sell alcohol, then the city can't just allow you to do it. You have to go out and get that license through the state. If there are other examples, because I noticed that that's just one example. If there were other things that they were looking for, that certainly is something that could be considered in the alfresco concept. But if it was really focused around that one example, the answer is just simply no.
Thank you. So we have 3 more bullet points from general retail, and I'm reading them as a little as connected, making sure that any of these recommendations and any of these forthcoming policies are sensitive and considerate of our most vulnerable people, whether it's seniors, youth, or immunocompromised, 88. Like, I mean, I actually just read something about, the wearing of the masks is hard for deaf and hearing impaired who use lip reading as the way that they communicate. So, I mean, not that we're going to solve all of the issues, but I'm reading these last 3 as any policies forthcoming should also be cognizant and considerate of vulnerable populations. Chris, would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment, because there's a lot of people that have like asthma and other problems, and they can't wear the mask. The first hour thing, I think what she was coming from when we started all this, a lot of the grocery stores were allowing seniors to come in first to do all their shopping. How the city would actually get all this information out to the elderly, I'm really curious. That's going to be fun to watch. But it's a good idea. I don't know how feasible it is, though, but it's a good idea. Okay. I don't have any more to add.
Because of time, I'm going to speed this along. Please raise your hand if you have any comments about something along the lines of that within our recommendations. I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Then with the 11 minutes we have left, I think we wanted to, Arts and Special Events has a quick update to recommendation number 4. Or Brendan, did you have something on the previous?
Recommendation 4 was the urban cafe, alfresco, etc. Yeah, so I just wanted to raise it if there could be a refinement of that recommendation language that I think staff could take on to bring it in more alignment. That the city is already moving forward with an al fresco thing that they've budgeted for, and I think it's being done by Parks and Rec. And that just whatever we're doing here is sort of in alignment with that effort. It doesn't seem useful to have multiple approaches to this. And I did want to just raise as an item, when at Palo Alto last night just started, they closed California Avenue yesterday evening and allowed restaurants to spill out onto that street doing food and beverage service. And there was not any police officers or traffic officers or public restrooms or any of these types of infrastructures that might be costly or take time to figure out. They closed this, just put up barriers and made it work. So I guess I would just like to see a refinement on that recommendation that is in alignment with where county what county is doing now and what the city is trying to accomplish with its alfresco effort. So that's it.
Thank you. And then
There was one concern about whether or not the task force wants to spend time to prioritize our recommendations. I'd like to have a brief discussion regarding that.
I think maybe we can frame it, given our time, as do we think it's necessary to
Sure.
prioritize? And we can prioritize on Wednesday, perhaps, when we have a little bit more time. Is that okay with people? Do we feel like we need to prioritize our recommendations, or is it enough? Because right now, I think there's somewhere between 9 and 12 recommendations that we might be putting forth as a task force. Any upfront thoughts?
Just my thought up front is no. I think all of our recommendations are probably going to be equally weighted and considered, and the infrastructure behind each could briefly be thought about by the powers that be, by the city council and Councilman Perales. So I don't see that prioritizing, because the first 3 are going to get read first. They're going to throw out the other 9. I doubt. So I feel like it could be a waste of time, because anything we do put forward, I would expect for them to be taken seriously. So
I would
Any
second that. I feel pretty much the same way.
Thanks, Megan. Overall, okay, we'll just put forth our recommendations. And Raul council member has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So my team doesn't have to prioritize anything what we bring to you next Wednesday when we've compiled this, but there will be an importance to prioritizing at some point. For instance, if the $100,000 that we put in the budget as a request and the mayor has included it, so now at this point it just has to be accepted by the full council. If that gets approved, that's not going to cover everything we may want to do, right? So we will have to prioritize, and we're going to use you all as this task force, right, to do that. And so there may be things that we can say, you know what, some of these items in here, that $100,000 can help cover the cost of it. And so you will need to prioritize at some point. So you can, have some of that discussion next Wednesday if you'd like. But once we get the budget actually approved, there will be time after that. If you don't want to prioritize yet as you're moving these forward, that's fine as well. But I just wanted to preface everybody. I think we will have to at some point.
Thank you.
all right then. I guess maybe we will have to do some prioritization then. Could have just said that. That would have been easier. No. So at this time, we should be moving to public comment. We were looking at 6 minutes remaining. I believe we have 3 attendees from what I saw last. My apologies. So in that case, with only 3 attendees, I believe we can allot 6 minutes, 2 minutes per if everyone wants to publicly comment. In your Zoom toolbar, we ask that you click the raise hand feature. Once you do, the D3 staff will call you one by one and unmute you. Please accept that unmute. So we're now open for public comment. All right.
Oh, Empire 7. I believe that's Juan Carlos.
Yeah, hi, Juan Carlos. I'll unmute you right now. Go ahead, you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for putting all the time into this. I made a couple comments just on the whole PD thing, and I just wanted to share more insight on that. That there's a few years where we spent a lot of efforts in trying to maintain sort of order with some of the homeless community that was encamped in our street. And so there was a situation where I ran into with a 5150 where it was really out of my hands. Something I just really didn't want to get into or get sued for. And that's what I just wanted to explain. My comment is that I did call for sort of a support and help from the PD, but that ended up going sour. And it was within a matter of seconds of PD showing up, not saying this is a reflection on every policeman, but I'm just also saying that when we're talking about sort of trying to inspire, manage, communicate to our communities, it seemed like everybody was sort of practicing that method before all the protesting. So as Fernanda said, maybe just really making a presence and campaigning that social distancing and health measures are really important, and how we can do that with the arts and culture, possibly. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Juan Carlos.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Appreciate that. All right, if we have no other further public comment, I believe we so.
Yep. All right. So thank you everyone for all your hard work over the past few weeks. Next steps. Based on today's conversation, we're going to have one final meeting on Wednesday, June 17th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. to finalize and hopefully approve our task force recommendations, possibly getting to prioritizing. If not, that might be a later conversation where we reconvene. I hope that the D3 staff will be able to make the amendments based on our conversation for our review, make that available prior so that we all have a little bit of time to digest that information and then be able to speak succinctly and quickly so we can move towards approval. And then second, currently our respective committees are not scheduled to meet again. I think the exception is arts and special events. We are meeting on Monday at 9, at least that's what we're hoping to do. If you are wanting to convene your committees before that Wednesday meeting, please contact your D3 liaison immediately so that they can work through all of that information and set up the Zoom meeting. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it. Wednesday meeting for all of us. If you want your committee to convene, contact your D3 liaison. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you to everyone who participated today. Next meeting will be Wednesday, June 17th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Please stay safe, stay healthy. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.